So a common misconception for a non-technical person is that he or she doesn't really have to do that much at the start of a startup, and that it's all about building a product and building as quickly as possible and then testing that product with users and then seeing if those users start using your product and then to keep building once you get that feedback. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth. And it's actually based on this false assumption that what matters about your product is its technical aspects and how many features it has. Well, that's not really the full picture. For you see, it's not about what your product does exactly, but whether it does the right thing for the right people. Are you building your product for the right people? And are you building the right thing for the right people? That's the most important thing to get right as an early stage startup. If you don't get that right, no one is going to use your product. You might have the best feature set in the world, and honestly, there's really no way to gauge what the best means. But let's say you think you have the best product in the world. No one is going to use it if your features don't seem useful to anyone who is using the product. So how do you overcome this problem of building the right thing for the wrong people or building the wrong thing for the right people? How do you overcome that potential obstacle? That is your role as a non-technical person. That is your role, to try to make sure that you are building the right thing for the right people. So here are 3 things that you can do as a non-technical person that I have been doing to some extent to make sure that you don't end up in a situation where you've built the right thing, but then for the wrong people, or built the wrong thing for the right people. So the first thing you can do is try to build a product community. Try to build something around your product where you can get a lot of potential users together talking about the issues maybe your product addresses or the experiences that your product can create. So there's a really good example of this, which is, let's say, Product Hunt. Product Hunt is a pretty good example of building a product community because the product itself is a product community. And how it got a lot of early users together was it just built a website where people would share great products. That's probably the best example of a product community that I can think of. And it really is a very useful exercise to get together a lot of users so that they can share their perspectives about different products, about the product that you're creating. And then you can just get this feedback and you can start observing user behaviors in action. You can see what actually gets done, what actually doesn't get done, what users actually do. That's the most important data. That is something that is so valuable to your product development process because it shows you what users actually value without you having to actually ask them what they value. They're showing you through their behavior. A second thing you can focus on as the non-technical person of your startup is on talking to users. You can actually go out there and talk to potential users. Now, there are many ways to find these potential users. You can go to different events, for instance, or you can go on social media channels like Instagram and Facebook and to talk to these people. There are a lot of groups on these social media websites where you can find people who have the needs that you're trying to address or have the problems you're trying to address. So that's just something else you can do as a non-technical person. There's a lot more to talking to your users than just going to events and just talking to people, but that's something I'll cover in a different video, and I've actually covered, I think, in my previous videos. So a third thing you can look into as a non-technical person is you can help with managing the product development lifecycle. So a third thing you can do as a non-technical person is you can look into managing the product development lifecycle. And this means that you are in control of defining which features have to be built. And it's natural for you to take on this role because your technical people are probably too busy working on the different features that your product is supposed to have, and you have to define the right features to build, and you are the person to do that because you are the person who is talking to the people who will be using your product. So it is your role to define which features have to be built, and for you also to define the timeline on which these features are to be built. You can't spend months building something, especially early on in the process, because you're trying to experiment with the different features that you think will resonate with your users. So it's all about product experimentation. You have to test out the features that you're trying to build, because there are many ways to solve a problem. There are many ways to address needs. Your job is to define which features have to be built and then to oversee that process of feedback, of build, measure, learn, as stated in the lean startup. You have to be in charge of this process of building, measuring, learning. But first you have to understand what you're trying to learn, how you're going to measure that learning, and then defining what to build. That is your role as well as a non-technical person. So based on just these three activities, and there are a lot more things you can focus on as a non-technical person, but I'm just going to cover 3 in this video. There's actually a lot you can do as a non-technical person to make progress on your early startup, and they are essential activities. In fact, I'd say essential to the whole product development process, so you don't end up in the situation that I stated early on in this video, where you might end up building the right thing for the wrong people or the wrong thing for the right people. You don't want to be in that situation, because when you're in that situation, it is extremely frustrating, and you'll probably find yourself in that situation once in a while. The point is to have the processes in place so you minimize the amount of time you are stuck in that situation of building the right thing for the wrong people or building the wrong thing for the right people, and that you identify that you are in that situation so you can do something about it. So that's all for this video. 3 things that you can do as a non-technical person. There's a lot you can do. And if you have any questions about what you can do as a non-technical person, I'd love to answer some of your questions in the comments below. So thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.